Every morning at exactly 7 o'clock, Lucas would go to the corner of the street he visited every day, sit down on the ground there, wrap his coat tightly around his shoulders, and watch the world go by for hours. He was 36 years old. His beard was unkempt, and his boots were held together with packing tape. Every day, thousands of people passed right in front of him. Bankers in suits, insurance agents, students with earbuds, and mothers pushing strollers. But not a single one ever so much as glanced at him. They either tossed him some change as they walked by or kept their distance. There was something none of them knew. He owned a hotel chain worth more than all the buildings on that street combined. Lucas owned over 300 luxury hotels spread across 4 continents. On the other side of the city, he had a hotel where his name was written in gold letters, 42 stories above the noise, and a luxury apartment on the penthouse floor. This wasn't a disguise for fun. It wasn't a documentary or a social experiment either. Lucas was doing this because 3 years ago, something inside him had quietly broken, and he still hadn't been able to fix it. It all began the year his father died. Elias Whitmore had built his empire from nothing. A single motel at a highway exit, purchased with a loan he'd barely managed to secure from a bank. He'd always told Lucas, "A hotel isn't a building, son. It's a promise. To every stranger who walks through the door, you make a promise that they'll be taken care of that night." Lucas had grown up with this belief, believing that, at their core, people wanted to look out for one another. Then his father died, and the company fell to him. That's when it all began. Business partners who called themselves family circled like vultures over the terms of the inheritance. His cousin, assuming Lucas wouldn't notice, tried to have shares written into the ownership deed for himself. His girlfriend of 8 months, with whom he'd wanted to draw up a prenuptial agreement, left him. Every act of kindness shown to him, every warm smile, every "I really want to get to know you," all carried a hidden price tag somewhere. Lucas had gradually begun to believe that human conscience was just a costume, that once you set aside money, status, and self-interest, no one would have any reason left to treat you well. So he decided to test this theory using the most honest method he could find, by acting like a beggar with nothing to his name. A year ago, he began sitting at the beginning of that street. Disguised as a man with nothing in his hands, he wanted to see if anyone at all, would still choose to treat him well when there was nothing to be gained. For a whole year, he saw almost no kindness or warmth from anyone. Young people would record him just to make fun of him, and most people would cross to the other side of the street to ignore him. Once, a man wearing an expensive coat tossed a few coins at his feet and walked away, without saying a word or even waiting for Lucas to say thank you. Everything had been terrible up until that Tuesday in October. But that day, everything changed. Her name was Elena Marsh, but Lucas didn't know that yet. She was 29 years old and worked at a restaurant 3 blocks away. She was walking quickly because she was running late for her shift. She wasn't rich. In fact, she wasn't even comfortable. Lucas would later learn that she'd spent the very last penny of that week's grocery money to get her car out of the parking lot. And the change in her coat pocket was, quite literally, all she had left until her paycheck on Friday. Still, she stopped right in front of him. "Hi," she said, kneeling down to meet his eye level instead of looking down at him, something Lucas had almost never seen anyone do. "It's freezing out here. Have you eaten anything today?" she asked. Lucas, taken aback by the question, shook his head from side to side. Elena wasn't putting on a show for the camera, nor was she playing the sympathy card for onlookers. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out some change, about $4 or $5, and gently placed it in Lucas's palm. "It's not much, but I hope it's enough for you to get something warm from the car on 9th Avenue. If you tell Manny I sent you, he'll add some extra rice." Then she smiled, not a pitying smile, not a showy one, but a genuine smile, and, glancing at her watch, she hurried off to her shift. Lucas sat there, holding the $5 in his hand as if it were a royal charter. He'd been given much more than this before at that street corner. Businessmen had occasionally handed him a folded $50 bill just to feel generous for the brief duration of a crosswalk signal. None of it had ever made an impression on him. But this was different. This woman had nothing to share, and yet she had shared. She hadn't looked at him as if he were a nuisance or a photo opportunity. She had looked at him as a person who was cold and hungry in that very moment, because, quite simply, that's what he was at that moment. For the first time in a year, Lucas felt something that wasn't grief crack open in his chest. Lucas continued to stand in the same spot every day at the same time, hoping to run into Elena again. And every time she passed by, Elena would strike up a brief conversation with Lucas, though, of course, she didn't always have a $5 bill to spare. But what mattered most to Lucas was Elena's warm conversation with him. Months passed, and one day in December, when it was very cold, Elena invited Lucas to her home. Staying outside in that cold and shivering could have made him sick. Although Lucas hesitated at first, he went with Elena to her home for dinner. After dinner, moved by Elena's warm demeanor, Lucas wanted to tell her the whole truth. Elena, actually, I'm not homeless. I'm the owner of a large hotel chain. A year ago, I decided to go down this path because everyone around me had been looking at me solely through a materialistic lens, and I'd come to believe that humanity was dead, he said. Elena was shocked at first, but later burst out laughing, thinking he was joking, but that was actually exactly what had happened. Lucas asked Elena for permission to take her to his hotel. Even though Elena still thought it was a joke, she didn't want to hurt Lucas's feelings and agreed to go with him. Elena had assumed the whole story was a joke until the front desk clerk greeted Lucas Whitmore at the hotel entrance. She couldn't believe her eyes and was stunned. Lucas was indeed the owner of the city's largest hotel chain. Lucas went up to his room, got dressed, and trimmed his beard and mustache. When he returned to the lobby, Elena didn't even recognize him. They had a long conversation. Lucas's goal was both to find the woman he would marry and to reaffirm his faith in humanity. If, after reading this part of the story, you too want to reaffirm your faith in the goodness of humanity, and if you enjoy stories like this, please like our video and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. The after goodbye. Exactly these experiences had both strengthened his faith in humanity and helped him find the woman he would marry, even though Elena found the situation strange at first. Lucas was a good man, humble, kind, and respectful. About a month later, they got married in a simple yet elegant family wedding ceremony. They had a wedding that wasn't even mentioned in any tabloid channel or magazine. Years later, when people asked Lucas Whitmore how he met his wife, he never began by talking about hotels, wealth, or the Whitmore name etched into the skylines of a dozen cities. He always started from the same place. On a cold Tuesday, she gave me her last $5, he'd say, and asked for nothing in return. That's when I realized people could still be good. That's how I regained my faith and decided to marry the best woman in the world. In that answer lay the only truth that truly mattered to him, not buildings, not balance sheets, not the empire his father had built brick by brick. Just a small, ordinary act of kindness, given without expecting anything in return, to a man the world had decided wasn't worth a second glance.